Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 29, season 3 of The Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Evening, Richie. What a first round of finals we had, including a Sunday clash that will not be forgotten for some time. But what do you think of the round, and how was your weekend?
Mate, what a round. What a week one of finals. Some gripping contests and you're right, that Rabbitohs Roosters game you won't forget in a hurry for a number of reasons. But yep, weekend was great, mate. Hope yours was as well.
Yeah, it was good, thanks. And while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to cover everything that you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of finals week 1, and our picks. We'll then stop and answer some questions from you guys, as well as some questions we've got for each other. We'll then preview finals week 2 and make our tips before ending the night with a recap of the Super League. So remember to send us comments and questions throughout the show. And we may as well jump straight into the stories of the week, Richie. And I see Jacko and Simon are here. Evening, guys.
Hey, fellas. Yes, sounds good.
First story, I suppose, most obvious, 7 Simbins in the Roosters-Rabbits clash. We're going to talk about it a bit more in the match review, obviously. But what was your take on the binnings?
7 Simbins. It sounds to me like that game was a Brad dream, that one.
I loved it.
So did I. But yeah, I think we were just chatting a bit before jumping on air. Yeah, 7 Simbins sounds very high, but I there were a couple that maybe were a bit dodgy, but a lot of those I couldn't really argue with, and it felt like the players took it out of the referee's hand a bit.
Yeah, there were definitely some there that I think were harsh. Like we talked before we went live, Victor Radley's first sin binning for the alleged punch, I thought was harsh. Burgess, I felt he was hard done by for what he got sin binned, but I thought he should have got sin binned for his head high on Tedesco.
Yeah,
so I think it was just due to the fact that he got let off, and then a few seconds later he did the same thing again. But yeah, it's interesting. It was a very interesting game to end the first week, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll leave that there until we go into the match review. Well, I'm adding a bit more to our story from last week about Taylor May. We talked about on the show that he had been given a suspension and it was pushed to the beginning of next season. That was all we really had, but after we went off the air, Peter V'landys decided he needed to get his face on camera again and gave a pretty reasonable explanation, if you believe him. He says that he delayed the suspension for the fans as they should not be punished for May's discretion. What do you think? Because I know I just said that it made great sense, but I think the reasoning actually made it worse.
Yeah, I think so too. I know it's going back a bit and under different people who ran the NRL, but look at people who've been rubbed out of final series, and we've seen Cam Smith, we've seen Isaac Luke rubbed out of grand finals. I know this is an off-field incident, but if anything, might be a little worse. That's the case.
I feel off the field is worse
because it's a legal matter. You know, yeah. I don't like it, mate. It just opened a can of worms, I think, and we've seen in the past people miss massive games because of silly suspensions, and now because it's a Panthers player. Yeah, got to think of the fans.
Yeah, well, you could say it as the Roosters, they lost Lindsay Collins.
Yeah.
And they needed to keep winning in order to get him back before grand final time. Obviously, that's not going to happen now, but that same reasoning they should have been able to use as well, going, the Roosters fans, it will punish them if he doesn't play. But then, yeah, it seems that it's gone back to normal because all the other bannings have happened, are happening straight away, including a new one for Taylor May, which we'll talk about soon. But Simon's just mentioned as well, saying Peter V'landys is bad for the sport. you should consider how the other fans feel about it. Yeah, it's for the betterment of Penrith fans, but Eels fans, I'm sure, would have been happy to see him go.
Yeah.
And I don't want to besmirch Taylor May, but it's not like he's a top tier Panther either. Like, I'm not saying it's right, but if it was Cleary or someone like that, like a big name, or like even if it was a Rooster like Tedesco or something like that, I could see. I wouldn't agree with the decision, but I could see the reasoning. But it's, a young back that they could quickly slot in with someone else. And then Simon's added to the Volandis saga saying he should probably negotiate better with the broadcast to get more money. Yeah, that was the big thing at the moment where they kind of rushed their negotiations and left Fox, I believe it was, with enough money to pick up rugby union as well, which was a bad business decision by the NRL. They could have got more money, but I don't understand enough of it yet, so I'm going to do some more research because we'll have more time next week to probably discuss that since there's only 2 games.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do more research on that, Simon, and we'll hit that one next week. But we'll continue with Taylor May because I think karma played its part as he was sent to the bin in the game that he shouldn't have been playing and has been given another week's suspension for a high tackle, and he also injured his hamstring. And may miss the rest of finals anyway. He has elected to take his 1 week suspension now since he's injured, and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, do you think that's a bit of karma, or am I just being a bit harsh?
Being a bit harsh, Brad. No, I mean it's almost it's a couple bits of karma, like you say, injured, sunburned, and suspension as well. So. Yeah, it all ended up being for nothing. The people upset over his suspension being pushed to next year.
Yeah, and Simon's just come back saying Fox gave more money to the AFL, and Channel 9 gave money to rugby union. So yeah, they lost on both sides. So great business decision by Volandis there. But next bit of news, it's hard. I can't get my head around it, but Manly, we're talking about them a lot, but Des Hasler, the news around him continues to swirl. One day you're getting told that he's going to get an extension on his contract as head coach, and then the next day you're hearing that he's going to walk out and not be their coach next year. The coach I was trying to talk about last week that I couldn't remember is Jason Riles. Finally came to me about 3 hours after we finished the show. But he's also been rumoured to be a target for Manly to either come in and overtake Hasler when Hasler's retired or replace him outright if he decides to walk. So obviously we'll keep an eye on an ear on the ground for what's happening with Des and Manly. Manly's just a horrible place of news right now. It doesn't seem like anything's going right. But what's your take? Do you think Des is going to stay or if he's going to move on?
Who knows, mate? It's like you say, at Manly right now, it all seems a bit of a mess. I don't know what Des has done to warrant being shown the door. I mean, he's had a lot of cards not fall his way this year. But you rewind back to 2021, and his team finished top 4. My other thing is who are they going to replace him with? Yeah, there's Riles. I don't know. For me, Des Hasler is a manly guy. Yeah, I think he's had a tough year, and a lot of the struggles towards the back end of the season, I don't think fall on his head. Obviously, it's been well documented. We've talked about it lots. Jersey Gate seemed like there was a divide in the playing group. And then they hung Des and Cherry Evans out to dry, making them front the press conference for that. So, yeah, in a way, I feel pretty sorry for Des.
I'm sure you're the only one, but well done. Jacko said that Desi is done, and if he stays, it will end in tears. I'm sitting on the fence on it. I'm not a fan of getting rid of coaches unless you got someone that can replace them, and I don't seem. Well, who's to say? You could throw Riles in there and he could be successful, like we're seeing with Peyton and Fitzgibbon when they've gone to the Cowboys and Sharks. You just don't know. He could also, completely fail like a Trent Barrett or a Nathan Brown. You just don't know. But yeah, we'll have to see. And yeah, Jacko's talking about Manly's caps out of balance. I think that's a big problem too. They've got a lot of money stored away on some players, and at the moment, you're not getting what you need out of those big money players. So, Tommy Turbo, give him a bit of leeway. He's injury prone and hasn't been able to survive the seasons. But even this year, when he was playing, he wasn't playing overly great.
I don't think he was necessarily very fit for the whole of the season. Like some of those games he played at the start of the year, he looked to be carrying injury. But I think Jacko raises a good point. I mean, when Tommy Turbo's on form, he carries a lot of their hopes, and he plays well, they play well, and they perform. But and that's irrespective of who coaches. I mean, Des could be there next year. If Turbo plays all their games, they're a top 8 side again easily, I think.
Yeah. So I'll keep my ear to the ground, and hopefully we actually get a definitive avenue that this is going to go, and we can talk about it when that actually happens. There are reports for the next bit of news that West Tiger Jock Madden signed a 2-year deal with the Broncos, although there's been no official word from either him or Brisbane. It's interesting because there were rumors that he was looking at going to potentially the Knights and things like that because he wanted game time. And hearing that he's going to Brisbane, I don't see him getting game time there. So it's an interesting decision. I'm sure he'll do well if given the chance. But yeah, I don't see him making it into the halves there right now. What's your take?
Same as yours. I don't see him being a starter at Brisbane in the halves with Reynolds, and I'm assuming they're going to keep running with Ezra Mam.
You think so?
Maybe Jock Madden's going to take the place of Tyson Gamble and be the third in line.
Yeah, but I suppose being third in line at Brisbane's better than being at the Tigers, maybe. I don't know.
Anything is really.
Yeah. Next bit of news, I think, is a faux pas on my point, but I'm not sure if it's gone under the radar or if it is just me not paying attention. But I talked to you a few days ago because I just found out. But Spark Sports secured the rights to the Rugby League World Cup over Sky here in New Zealand. Bit of a surprise. You'd think Sky Sport would have gone for it, especially since they're the coverage of the NRL and Origin and everything. Bit disappointing because it means I have to go buy Sky Sport for a couple of months or a month to cover the World Cup because I want to be. We're obviously going to do some shows talking about the World Cup here, and I'm hoping to do some writing on the Kiwis' journey. So and Simon said it's been known for the last 6 months. See, I'm just that naive, Simon. I just assumed it would be with Sky. But yeah, what's your take on that, Richie?
Yeah, it was news to me too, Brad. So obviously you and I have had our heads buried in the sand for the past 6 months. I think now you're discovering the secret behind why I have so many different emails because start a new email, get a free trial. But no, in all seriousness, I think I'll pay you said it was roughly $25, right? I think I'll pay that for the World Cup. 25, $40.
Yeah, I think I looked. It was like $25 for a month.
I'll cop that.
Simon says that they've got the men's, women's, and wheelchair rugby league, and that Spark's very good at winning these one-off events because with money and Sky holding their money back for something. Yeah. So but Jacko may have just learnt as well because he said it's annoying. It's a pain getting just extra ones, but that's the business. I guess Sky may have decided that since it's in the UK and it's going to be funny hours, they might not get as many viewers anyway. I feel like it's the wrong decision with how strong all these international teams are starting to look. I think it could be one of the better World Cups in some time. But yeah, $25. I'm sure I'll get it into the budget. It'll work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and next bit of news, we'll move on from that. Rooster Luke Cleary mentioned in an interview this week that he believes the NRL should limit the amount of contact training sessions the teams have, just like what the NFL does, in an aid to assist in reducing concussions and injuries. What's your take on that? Do you think that's something the NRL should look at, or should they leave that for teams to make that decision?
Well, I think it kind of the way teams train kind of has to fall on the clubs, really, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know what restrictions the NRL could put in place, but at the same time, I'm not surprised Cleary would come out and say something like that. He's had massive struggles with concussions, so he's probably just looking out for himself and his fellow players. But yeah, I don't know, mate. It's a tough contact game. You got to train for that somehow.
Yeah, well, I think I'm not sure exactly how the NFL works, but I know like in trainings they have the red shirts. So like your quarterback and like your key players, they have like a red thing on, and that means the defenders in the practice don't hit them. You know, it's like touch, just to make sure, you know, you don't want your, you know, 10, 20, $30 million a year quarterback going down because one of your defenders, you know, hit him. But yeah, it's a different sport. But I would have no issue with a club deciding their own way. If you've got a guy like Luke Cleary that you know gets, you know, concussions quite regularly, you kind of tell everyone to kind of ease up on, you know, poleaxing him at training. But yeah, I'm sure it's something that clubs have looked into already and decided. But yeah, it's you train how you want to play, I guess.
Yeah,
the old cliche.
That's the way I see it. I'm sure you were the type to do some grubby moves on your teammates in your day too.
Yeah, I was. But yeah, never to try to hurt them.
But, no, of course not.
But yeah, we'll see what happens there. That might be something that they start talking about more regularly in the off season. They're not really going to talk about right now. But Cody Walker at the Rabbitohs is decided to hold off contract talks with the Rabbitohs until the season's ended. I don't think it's anything sinister, like he's going to look for a deal elsewhere or anything. I feel like he'll stay with the Rabbitohs until he hangs up the boots. But they kind of got more important things to worry about right now than going into nitty gritty. You know, they want to try to make the grand final. So I see that situation. He's kind of been quiet all year about, do I want to go? You've heard no rumors other than traditional, he's going to the Dolphins, that every player that's off contract is. But yeah, I think it's a good decision. You know, focusing on the job at hand right now, you've got plenty of time. He's obviously, I feel like he's very comfortable there. They basically let Reynolds go to keep him around, so I don't see him leaving straight away. But what's your take? Do you think that it's a sly move and he's going to be a Dolphin?
No, I wouldn't say so. He strikes me as the type of player that'll want to be a Rabbitoh until he retires, and he's probably a couple of years away from that. But he's not the youngest. I think he debuted quite late. You know, he didn't come into regular first grade action until he was into his mid to late 20s, I believe. But
yeah, he's a late bloomer.
Yeah, he was, and I agree. I think the position the Rabbitohs are in now, it's probably smart him focusing on the footy because they have a pretty good chance with the form that they're in, and with him and Latrell firing, he was epic on the weekend. I thought his ball playing was great. So yeah, keep riding that train and make those decisions once it's all said and done this year.
Yeah, definitely. And next bit of news, Wigan Warriors have tabled a massive offer to Bevan French to try and tempt him to remain with the club instead of taking the Knights offer. It sounds like it was a like superstar level value, which I'm happy to see him stay there as a Wigan Warrior fan. I think staying with Wigan and building with what they've been doing this year would be a lot better for him career-wise than going to the Knights. Especially with all the talk. I know Andrew Johns came out this week and said he thinks Ponga could move into the halves, but Kalen Ponga says he still wants to be a fullback, and I don't see Bevan French going there to be, just sitting on the bench waiting for a chance to shine or be a winger. So I feel like he'll stay at Wigan. You think he'll take the risk and go to Knights, or?
I think if Wigan have thrown him a nice offer, I think it's probably a good idea to take it if it's substantially more than what he might make at the Knights. I mean, he's a superstar over there at Super League. When he was in the NRL, he had some great moments and then some quiet moments as well, but he seems to be consistently superstar level over there. So if he's going to make some good coin doing that, yeah. I think he should stay. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get some news about that before we finish up for the season. So we'll have some definite answers, pretty sure. And Simon's also mentioned that thing is he could get homesick over there, which happens quite a lot. I think he'll stay though. It's ridiculous money. But second to last bit of news before we get into injuries, Joseph Tapine looks set to become a high-valued free agent with multiple clubs ready to throw their hat in the ring. Do you think he's going to leave the Raiders, Richie? I personally would like to see Andrew McFadden lure him to the Warriors. I think he'd fit into that front row very nicely.
If he doesn't, I'd like to see him stay at the Raiders. Obviously, love him to come here. That would be amazing, but that's massive pipe dream. If he doesn't come here, I'd like to see him stay at the Raiders. Last thing I'd want to see is him go to a club that I
go to the Roosters. He'll go to the Roosters.
Roosters or Storm. We don't need to see that. Either stay loyal to the Green Machine or come to the Warriors.
I feel, I'm the same. I only like to see him leave if he was coming to the Warriors as a Warriors fan. But I think it's different now. If it was last year when, you had the dramas with his wife having goes at Ricky and social media and things like that, I would be more confident that he might move on. But he has really shown some great growth this year. And I think he'll repay that loyalty to the Raiders. So, it'll be good news. Got a Panthers fan. It's good to see there's one of you out there. Panthers, I don't see them going all the way. I'm putting it down now just because you said that. They're going to lose to the Rabbitohs. Last bit of news before we move on to injuries, though. Tomorrow night, we are joining Rue and Hammer for their Warriors 2022 season review. Should be a great chat with the boys there. So if you're interested, go and join us. It's, I think, 9 p.m. New Zealand time on their page. But, should be a great chat. And hope you join us there. But injuries, we don't have a lot because there's not a lot of teams left. Taylor May, as we mentioned already, injured his hamstring. He's undergoing scans. I've had no confirmation on length of time. So he could be back next week. Mitch Moses is racing the clock to be ready for Friday's match after he failed his HIA in the weekend. He was going to need a sign-off from a specialist to get the all clear. So it's really up in the air on if he's actually going to play or not. I was hoping to have a definite answer, so I'd be a bit more confident in my pick this week. But, and all stages, it looks like he should be available. And then Adam Elliott is out this week with a hip injury for the Raiders. And that was it, really. There were a few other injuries. I know they announced that Jared O'Reilly-Hargreaves and Sam Walker had some substantial injuries that they had got before the game in the weekend and played through because they needed them there, but now they're out, so it doesn't really matter. But they should all be available, including James Tedesco, who took a head knock. They'll all be available for World Cup. 2 of those 3 will be in for the World Cup. I don't think Sam Walker will be making an appearance, but Tedesco and Hargreaves will be. So that was all we had there. Now we get into Naughty Boy Corner, which there's quite a lot due to one game in particular. But we've got Jared O'Reilly-Hargreaves got 3-match ban. which he's been told he can take next season or he can take in the World Cup. So it'd be interesting to see what they do. If he goes to the Kiwis, I wouldn't be surprised to see him miss the first couple of games because the Kiwis do have a reasonably soft draw at the start. So you're not going to need a Hargraves when you're playing. I think they're playing Jamaica and things like that. So I think that's probably where it'll happen. And then Thomas Burgess, he's got 2 match. So he won't be back unless the Rabbitohs make the grand final, which will probably happen. There, I'm sorry, Mr. Panther. And then we had Taylor May, obviously got the 1 match, which we already talked about. So he's going to miss the next game for the Panthers, which he was going to miss with injury anyway. And then fines. Thomas Burgess, he got an $1,800 fine for the grade 1 high tackle he did to Tedesco. Then we've got $1,800 for Tane Milne for a grade 1 high tackle. Joseph Suwali got a dangerous contact, $1,800 fine. I think that was for him raising his knees when he runs into contact, which he has been warned about before. Dale Finucane got a $3,000 fine for a crusher tackle. Felici Kafusi got an $1,800 fine for dangerous contact. And then Spencer Linu got a $750 fine for a high tackle. So a bit of money made this weekend and a bit of money lost. So be interesting to see if we get as much of a rap sheet this week. But that was it what we had for that. So we'll go into the NRLW before I hand over to you, Richie. Had some good games this week. Did you get any of them?
Yeah.
You watch? Yep.
Yeah.
So we had Titans defeating the Eels 18-16, Dragons defeating the Broncos 19-18 in the first ever Golden Point in the NRLW, and then the Knights defeating the Roosters. Or did I get that one wrong? No, the Knights won, didn't they?
Yeah.
No. Yep. I feel like they lost. But no, some good matches there. The only one I actually got to watch was the Golden Point.
I watched the Titans Eels one. I watched the one. They were all pretty close and epic looking games, but probably the one I wanted to watch was the Broncos Dragons.
Yeah, it was really good. And yeah. No, yeah, I did get it wrong. It was 18-16 to the Roosters. So the Roosters beat the Knights. It was close. Sorry, I wrote it down on my notes wrong. I just had to jump up on the website. But yeah, really good games. And I think it's still a testament to how good this competition can be. And hopefully we see it stay as competitive as we saw this week once they've got some more teams in the mix. So this week going on, we've got all games on Sunday. They got 4th place Broncos versus 6th place Eels, 5th place Titans versus 1st place Roosters, and then 3rd place Dragons versus 2nd place Knights.
That'll be a goodie.
Yeah, some good matches there. I think Dragons Knights will probably be the match of the round going off here. But yeah, that's all we had for that part, which means we're going to talk about finals week 1, which means I hand the floor to you, Richie.
Sounds good, mate. So Friday night game, Panthers versus the Eels, 27-8. The Panthers get it done. 4 tries to 1 for the Panthers, a double to Brian To'o, 1 for Dylan Edwards, and 1 for James Fisher-Harris. And just the 1 try for the Eels, Oregon Kaufusi, 7-6 at halftime with the Cleary field goal. Yeah, impressive from the Panthers, wasn't it, Brad?
Yeah.
Like we've seen the Eels get up over the Panthers twice this year, wasn't to be for a 3rd time. Cleary didn't miss a beat. We've seen the word masterclass thrown around a few times this week, and they're probably on the money. He was outstanding, but scary that the Panthers pretty much dismantled the Eels, who have been known to get up in these big games against some of the big teams the past couple of years. But, yeah, they got taken apart. So it's hard to see a team that might beat the Panthers this year. Again, they're just looking just so strong across the park.
Yeah, Jacko said the same as you there. It's the Panthers' comp to lose. They have to have a real bad day to lose. And yeah, as much as I was saying they're not going to go all the way, I think that's all being very facetious. But they were well rested. Obviously, they had a lot of players take the week off the week before, and they made it look easy. Nathan Cleary had no sign of ring rust after being suspended for so long. He played like he'd never left. Hard to fault them at all, really. They were dangerous with the ball in hand, and their defense shut the Eels down. James Fisher-Harris continued his great season, further stamping his claim as the best front rower in the game. They did have a few errors in them, if I want to be nitpicky, but they would make an error and then back it up with defense and stop the Eels from going anywhere, which is kind of the goal. If you make an error, you want to make up for it. As you guys have all said now already, many had Panthers as title favourites before the finals even started, and after this performance, it's fair to say that they're the firm favourites to go all the way. Eels just picked the wrong time to have an off night. It felt like they were never in the contest, to be honest, and every time they looked like they were going to start building momentum, they threw it away with schoolboy errors. I think that was the glaring thing I saw in this whole game, was just they didn't know how to hold on to the ball. Losing Mitchell Moses didn't help them by any stretch, but at the point that he went off around the 59th minute, I think, they were already over. The game was over there. And this is the Eels I expect each week. But the perks of finishing in the top four is they get another chance. And if they find the form from a few weeks ago, they could surprise us maybe.
Yeah, 16 errors from the Eels. So, yeah. I felt like a few of them were made by Wanga Blake.
Yeah, Walker Blake had a night to forget, and
there were a few, but yeah, you're going to find it hard against the Panthers making that many errors. You're right. So
yeah, and I think before we move on, with the Walker Blake, when he started making errors, that's when Cleary started really targeting him as well.
Yeah,
which just adds to that masterclass that you were talking about.
Yeah, 100%. He can spot a weakness, Cleary. He's a special player, but yeah, you're right. The good thing for the Eels is this is where finishing top four is so handy for them, because they've got this loss out of the way, and if they bounce back, they can take out anybody. So
yeah,
it just depends which Eels side turns up on the day.
Exactly.
The next game on Saturday was the Storm going down to the Raiders 28-20, 5-4. The Raiders, Matt Timuko, Jamal Fogarty, Elliot Whitehead, Hudson Young, and Jordan Rapana. 4 tries for the Storm. Xavier Coates with a hat-trick, and Nelson Osofa-Solomona. Poor Xavier Coates getting a hat-trick, and they wound up losing. I think it's the first time since 2014 the Storm failed to go past first round of playoffs. So, obviously that's an incredible run. But, props to the Raiders. Really good job to come back and win that one. I think a lot of their forwards were fantastic. Obviously, Tapine, Hudson Young. But, beating the Storm in Melbourne, that's a good confidence booster for the Raiders for the finals.
Yeah, well, I've got on here their dominance in Melbourne continues, because I think that was their 4th or 5th. I'm sure Simon can tell us. It was like their 4th or 5th win in Melbourne in a row. And I've got on here, they just played simple footy. There's like no flashy. They just do what they need to do right. The pack, as you said, Joseph Tapine, or Josh Papali'i did really well as well.
Yep.
They just controlled the middle, and that gave the backs all the chances they needed, and they made Storm look silly on defense, which isn't something you hear a lot. Matt Timoko was having a field day, including a great one where he fended Munster into next week. Jamal Fogarty scored a nice try and just looks composed out there, which I think is probably the best compliment I can give him. It's not like he's had a lot of finals experience, it's fair to say. But he was out there just doing what he needed to do. And I think that's why the Raiders have been so successful in this amazing run they've had, is that they're not trying to overplay their hand. They know, each player knows what they need to do, and they just do it. Which, hopefully some other teams that didn't make the 8 take some notes. But yeah, Hudson Young, as you mentioned already, thought he had another strong night. Jordan Rapana looked good and scored probably the flukiest try he'll ever get, where it bounced off Sebastian Chris's head.
That was a set play, mate. That was a set play.
No doubt. But yeah, another impressive outing for the Raiders. They're the story of the finals for me. A couple of weeks ago, we thought they weren't going to make it at all. And I want to see their winning streak continue this week. I really want to see that happen. Storm, as you said, out of the finals early, and they've only got themselves to blame, really. They showed they could score points, giving Coates that hat trick and Nelson scoring a try. But a bit like the Eels, they just made too many errors and plenty of poor defensive reads. And I've got here my biggest note: they were just unstorm-like, which isn't the first time I've said that this year. And with so many players now exiting the club, it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust in 2023. Obviously, it's still that cliche, you never rule them out. But it's going to be interesting times there. But they've still got the main spine lined up, which is the Cole. So
yeah. I think they've missed Pappenhausen massively for one. But yeah, their defense was unstorm-like. You're on the money. 39 missed tackles. And you just have to look at Jamal Fogarty's try as a perfect example. Targeted Nick Meaney in the line, but there were 3 people that could have stopped him, and he just dragged them over the line. Very unstorm-like.
And Jacko said, we're Storm D for years. And Simon says, hopefully the Raiders go all the way to the grand final. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them make the grand final. But yeah. Great match. I was very happy for the Raiders.
Yeah, it was a good match. And on to another great match. How good was this one? Cowboys 32, Sharks 30. So for the Cowboys, we had 5 tries. Tom Gilbert, Tom Dearden, Peter Hiku, Murray Taulagi, and Jason Tamilola with the game-equaling try in the 79th minute. For the Sharks, Toby Rudolph, Siosifa Talakai, William Kennedy, Cam McInnes, and William Kennedy with the second try. This was just back and forth, Brad. I think we were talking before coming on, and I agreed with what you said. Not a lot of defense being played, but highly entertaining. And Valentine Holmes back at Shark Park kicking the field goal to win the game from 45 out against his old club. Trying to think how Sharks fans must feel in that situation. It'd be like if the Warriors were good enough to make the finals and play the Cowboys, and Peter Hiku got the game winner. Would rip your heart out. But what a game! What a game!
The Warriors know how to rip our hearts out without going to finals, so don't you worry.
Yeah,
I've got here. It was my game of the week in regards to straight football. Close match ending with golden point. It's what you want to see in finals. The fact that it went to extra time as well kind of added to the excitement factor. Yeah, as we said before we went live, defense was an issue for both sides. They were going try for try all night. But the defense did improve once they got to golden point. It's like when they knew that any mistake could cost them the game. That's where it all got better. So it showed it was there. It's just for some reason they forgot for the first 80. But yeah, the defense needs work for the Cowboys, obviously. They look good on attack, though. Nice efforts from Peter Hiku. He scored a great try. Tom Dearden's try was good. And then, the match winner effectively for Jason Tamilola, that I think really gave the Cowboys the edge once they went into golden point. But yeah, the Cowboys did have a few early chances in golden point, but couldn't sink them until that, super deep Valentine Holmes one. It's good to see him get all the glory in that moment there, because it's been such a good season for him this year, I think.
Yeah.
Last year was a bit hit and miss. He was kind of finding his groove, but I think he's really gone to a new level for the Cowboys here. And great effort from them, well deserved. The Sharks, they'll be disappointed. They did more than enough to win this match. Their forwards are busy. Talakai, he did make a few errors, but he made up for them with some strong runs. Will Kennedy looked dangerous out the back. Hines had another good game as well. They just needed better defense. But like the Eels, they have a second life, and I think they'll feel more confident with their second shot compared to the Eels in terms of the efforts they put on. The Eels really were embarrassed in theirs, where this one they easily could have won if they had just done a few things better. But yeah, fantastic match.
He's pretty clutch, isn't he, Valentine? We've seen him do that to us before.
Yeah, he knows how to do it. I think that's a scary factor in finals footy, that that you've got Valentine who can, get those 2-point field goals reasonably well. But yeah, fantastic for the Cowboys.
Yeah, massive win for them. Now they get the rest and go back in a couple of weeks to play one game away from the grand final at their home in Townsville. That's going to be huge, a huge leg up for them. So congrats, Cowboys. Very well done. And last but not least, the massive Sydney rivalry. Rabbitohs 30, Roosters 14. 5 tries to 3. AJ Alex Johnston keeps scoring. Latrell Mitchell, Alex Johnson with a second. He knows how to score him. Jai Arrow and Isaiah Tass, 3 tries for the Roosters. Angus Crichton, Daniel Tupou, and Nat Butcher. This is probably going to be remembered most for the 7 sin binnings. Absolute carnage.
Yeah.
Go on, Brad.
Yeah, so it's the most talked about finals game in some time with those 7 sin bins. I don't think I've ever seen a game this chaotic, nor will I ever see one this chaotic again. The Rabbitohs, though, they look good in this match, despite being down to 11 players. For a spell, they had no issues getting points on the board. Lachlan Elias improved his defense this week. We talked last week about how Angus Crichton was just using him as speed bump. That didn't happen this week. He shored up and he was getting his tackles done. So it was good to see in just 1 week they knew the problem, they knew how to fix it, and they got it done. Alex Johnson's double saw him score 30 tries for the 2nd season in a row.
Insane.
His ability to find the line's impressive. Latrell Mitchell had another strong game and was clinical with the goal kicking, which he liked to remind all the Roosters fans after he was doing them all. Just a good outing for South. I think if they can beat the Sharks this week, it could lead to a great matchup against the Panthers in the prelims. There was a bit of talk before I move on about the Roosters about the Rabbitohs milking. And I think it's a fair criticism. I know Latrell's come out and said that he was blaming the bunker and not his players milking. I think it's probably a bit of both. I think there was definitely some milking in there. Like Jacko's kind of said, cheap shots and diving for penalties with all the push have ruined the game. 200 minutes to watch less than 50 minutes. There was, I think the milking led, there was a lot of stuff that it led to, and I've said it before on the show. I think the best way to fix it, if the NRL had the balls, was if you stay down for an injury, you go off for an assessment. And if you go off for an assessment, that should remove some of these guys milking, because if you have a guy like Latrell, you obviously want him on the field. If he knows if he milks here, gets that penalty, but he's off for the next 10 minutes for an assessment, he's not going to do it. So I think that would fix the problem a little bit, maybe. But it wasn't all because of that the Roosters lost. I think the Roosters had the wrong attitude in this match. We talked about it before we went on air. They were niggly all night due to that rivalry. And after that first sin binning, which I didn't agree with, but after that first sin binning 4 minutes into the match, the Roosters should have known that the ref wasn't going to let some of that stuff go and adjust. It's that cliche, you got to play to the whistle, play to the guy that's making the officiating. They were harsh, but you got to change your play. But Sam Walker, I thought he had an off night with the kicking tee. Losing James Tedesco early certainly didn't help them, and not having Joey Manu wasn't going to help them to start with. But if Tedesco's off, Manu goes back to fullback, and you're probably stronger. So in this situation there, Joe Suwali, who, as we talked about last week, apparently some of his friends are like, you got to get rid of Tedesco. With what we saw at fullback, he's still young. He's not ready to be the fullback for the Roosters by any stretch.
He doesn't have the ball playing like Tedesco.
No.
He can catch, he can run, but I think the ball playing's got to develop if he wants to play there for sure.
Yeah, and they also lost Crichton with an HIA later on, so they looked like the walking wounded out there for a while. But I think if cooler heads had prevailed, like we saw the week before, if cooler heads had prevailed, they could have got the result. But my last bit was at least the team you predicted to win the comp is now out, and they only lasted a week longer than my predicted team. So I feel justified, and it shows that we know nothing.
That's fair, but my top try scorer tip at the start of the year just solidified that. So with the grubbiness, this might sound controversial, but I love it if they went the way of ice hockey and just let 1v1, just let them biff it out, have a fight, send them off for 5 minutes, and they come back and they've got it out of their system.
It never happened.
Yeah, I know, but how cool!
That's why they all have that's why they have boxing fights in the off season, Richie. Get it out. But yeah, anything else you want to add on about that match?
Not really, mate. I kind of agree with Jacko. Not a lot of footy, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Rivalry, bitterness, drama. Yeah, but
yeah.
You're right. Like football-wise, it took a long time to get that game out of the way, but I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, so that means we move on to our final tips. I'll see if I can bring this up. Shocking round for all of us, fair to say. Worse for me. I've never felt so low being at the bottom of this ladder. But Richie, you're at the lead, got the lead due to a technicality of R coming before S, with 2 out of 4, which gives you overall 2 out of 4. Simon also got 2 out of 4, and I got 1 out of 4. So we'll see what happens this week with only 2 games to pick. If you can give us your pick soon, Simon. But yeah, it was an interesting round. I put my picks that I picked here, I put them up on Facebook last Thursday and said that I wasn't confident and could potentially have seen myself get all 4 games wrong. So I'm happy I at least got 1. But yeah, congrats to you two. And it means my chance of winning the whole thing's already gone. But I'm sure one of you two will take it nicely. But we'll go to questions. Got no questions in the crowd because we basically answered them all the way through. But I'll let you go with your question to me first.
Cool, mate. So which team and which player impressed you most after week 1 of the finals?
I had a think, and I feel it's cheating to say Penrith because Penrith played like Penrith do.
Yeah.
So they don't really impress you when they do what they do every week. So I've gone with the Raiders. I think they've impressed me. Just the run they've gone on. I've been really, really happy with how they went. And it was a game that they, potentially they should have lost. You go look into it and go, the Storm should beat them. So great for them there. So that's my team. Player that impressed me, no surprise, it's a forward. I've gone with Jason Tamilola. He got 270 meters, 104 post contact, and he was, on the money, scoring that much needed try in the last minute to take his team to Golden Point. So yeah, thought it was fantastic from him there, and kind of showed why he's worth the money. It's the apples and oranges when you pay big dollars and you get Jason Tamilola, or you pay big dollars and you get David Fafita. So Titans aren't in the running anymore, but I'm still sticking the knife into Fafita. But yeah, do you have who
Yep.
was your team?
So player, I think hard to go past. Cleary didn't miss a beat. Um, yeah, and Mikey Mitchell's just said too, as Cleary reached his full potential. I
Yeah,
don't know, mate. He's still very young, but gee, he's won the Origin series. Now he's won a grand final. Very likely he could win another grand final this year back to back, which is huge. I think even if he has reached his potential, he's pretty damn good right now. But he's only young. You got to say he could probably get even better. He's probably our generation's, well, this next generation's Andrew Johns or Jonathan Thurston. You know, this next generation. I mean, he's that top dog of the here and now.
yeah.
Team. I think given where most people envisaged they would finish this year, myself included. I think the Cowboys to go from most people tipping them to be a bottom four team to now
Most
one
people
way
pick them for the spoon.
exactly, and now they're one win away from a grand final. It's obviously, like you say, easy to pick the Panthers as a team that impressed you, but I think Cowboys have come a long, long way. So I'm impressed by that.
Yeah, and before I ask you my question, I'll just answer Mikey's question as well, where he said, has Cleary reached his full potential? I don't think he has.
Mm,
Like he's still too young. I think it's only going to get better for him. There's still some issues with his games from time to time, but he's probably the most consistent half we've seen since those Thurstons and
mm,
that, which is what you pay them the big bucks for, to consistently give you, the rocks and diamonds are hard to split type of scenario that we always talk about. And I think we'll see a lot more out of him as well. But he's pretty much done it all already. But yeah, I don't see him getting worse. That's to say. And yeah, Simon said he's got no TikTok this year. So yeah, he's improved as well, getting off the TikTok. But my question for you before we move on was, this is the first time since 2001 that both the Storm and Roosters have not reached week 2 of the finals. Do you think we're starting to see a change of the guard with these once dominant sides moving down the pecking order and getting replaced by the likes of Penrith and Cowboys and Sharks and whatnot?
How massive of a stat is that, by the way? 2001. Where were you
Yeah,
in 2001? I was probably just out of high school.
I was still in high school because I'm younger than you. I was still in high school.
That's crazy. I think the Roosters are probably in a better spot than the Storm, if I'm being honest. Um, they're going to welcome Brandon Smith next year. I think they'll still be a team to watch for sure. I'm not going to say right here and now that the Storm are going to drop off completely, but I think next year's the last time Craig Bellamy's going to go around, isn't it? I think he said
It is.
he's retiring after next year. They're going to lose a pretty big chunk of that forward pack. The Bromwich brothers, Kafusi,
Kafusi.
Brandon Smith. I think it's. I'm so reluctant to say that they're not going to be a force because every time you say that, you see them bounce back. We've seen them lose Cam Smith, Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, and they just still keeping on. But I think it's, by Storm standards, they're going to struggle a wee bit next year onwards.
Yeah, I think the only change in the guard really is that the Storm used to be, it was always the Storm or Roosters with the team. That's changed now. The team is now Penrith.
Yeah.
So it's changed in that stance. I think the Storm will go okay. Like I said, you never write them off. I think that first year without Bellamy, we'll see them drop because potentially, we didn't talk about it, but judging by the news, it sounds like most likely that year Munster won't be there either.
Yeah.
So I think that's when you'd see them slide. But a slide for the Storm, they might slide and end up being like 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say they're wooden spoon bound or they're not going to make the finals, because you're silly if you do that. But yeah, and Simon said he thinks Melbourne still have to improve for the sake of the game in other parts of Australia. Yeah, it's a thing. I know my flatmate was in Melbourne a few weeks ago and said like they don't care about it in Melbourne. The general spectator, it's not an NRL area.
Mm.
They need to work on that somehow, but it's hard with AFL over there. But yeah, I don't know.
How badly would you want the Warriors to be a side that comes seventh or eighth? We talk about
It,
this that being a slide for the Storm. I'd love for the Warriors to finish seventh or eighth right now.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's just, I suppose that just shows you the differences in expectations.
Yeah.
And yeah, Jacko's made a good point. He said the Storm have been dominant for years, yet have not grown the game at all in their area. Yeah, I don't like. I'm not there, but I don't know. I assume it's hard with AFL, but you can say like with the Warriors, they haven't done the greatest job recently with COVID, but trying to build league in Auckland when you've got this little All Blacks team running around is very difficult as well, but they still try. And I feel like the Storm just keep bringing in players from other areas rather than trying to find those players. And yeah, Simon said there's a small fan base here and it's going to take generations to build up. Yeah, it's still the thing. Like I still find it crazy that you can watch a Melbourne Warriors game in Melbourne and hear Warriors chants in the crowd. Just blows me away. But yeah, it's something they need to work on. I don't know how they're going to. You'd think it would come naturally when you're winning every bloody year, but it's a hard base. But yeah, we may as well go into our picks. Oh, I didn't have my picture. Oh no. One moment, caller. I don't have the picture. So I had a beautiful picture and it's gone. It's a beautiful picture of Nico Hines. But we have two games this week. Friday night we have Eels versus Raiders. I have picked the Raiders, and so has Simon.
I'm going Eels. I'll be the point of difference. There you go. Combank Stadium. I'm going to bank on Mitch Moses being healthy enough to play.
Yeah, I just want to see the Raiders continue.
Yeah, sorry, Simon. I'd love to see the Raiders win, but I can also see a pair of bounce back.
Yeah, and then the final game of the round is Saturday night, Sharks versus Rabbitohs. I have gone with the Rabbitohs, and Simon has gone with the Sharks.
I'm going Rabbitohs. This one's at Allianz Stadium, which I think actually favours Souths, and I think they're in a good spot of form. So I think they'll continue it.
Yeah, again, I'm 100% not confident in my picks. But yeah, we'll see. Should be a good match. They both should be really good matches, though. So really going to look forward to talking about them next week. Before we go, though, we have overseas news. We had our elimination rounds to set up our semi-finals. So, but the big news coming out of it, we had Leeds defeated Catalans 20-10, and Salford defeated Huddersfield 28-0. Which sees the semi-finals be Wigan versus Leeds and St. Helens versus Salford. But the big news was the Catalans game. Mitchell Pearce was sin-binned twice in the match, and it's the referee for this match was pelted with plastic cups thrown by Catalans fans as he left the field. Catalans had 3 sin-bins and a send-off, and their social media team tweeted in the 76th minute of the game having a go at the referee. I didn't get to watch the game. I tried when I heard this news. I tried to get it, but I couldn't find any replays before we went on. But it just sounded like it was a capitulation from Catalans, and the ref obviously wasn't having a great day. But yeah, I think it's a poor look from the fans doing that, and the actual social media team for the club having a go while the game is on.
I think the club's social media, whoever's running their social media, should stay away from tweeting about referees. It's not a good look at all.
Yeah, I'm not even involved with the Warriors, and I don't even do that. on the social medias. I might have a slide dig on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Simon also mentioned it was a very confusing game because you didn't know if the games would be cancelled due to the death of the Queen.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago about the Rugby League World Cup, sorry, having a plan in place in case the Queen passed away during the tournament. She kind of gave them a solid there and left before it started. But yeah, I thought we would have seen this pushed out, but it seemed to be fine. Yeah, and that's what Simon said as well. Rugby League World Cup, probably glad it's happened now. Yeah, it's obviously sad times for her and her family, but yeah, it's at least meant that there's no distractions and no delays for the World Cup. But some great games for the semi-finals with only 2 games of the NRL this week. I'm going to try to get both of these on my watch list, depending if I can time work with the work in the early mornings, but we'll see.
Who you going to tip there? Wigan and St. Helens?
I think so. I'm a Wigan fan, so I'm biased.
Yeah.
And St. Helens are kind of like your Melbourne or your Penrith, and when it comes to Super League, they're just always there. Wigan try their best, but sometimes they fall apart. But St. Helens is the constant. But yeah, it should be. You said when it is 7. I don't know what you mean, Simon. But yeah, anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, thanks everyone for chatting with us. Again, we're minus Paul, but
yeah, I forgot to mention that Paul's not here,
yeah,
which is why we had the beautiful pictures.
With only half the games to review this week, we made good time, and we won't have Paul messaging us tomorrow about going for an hour and a half.
We still will. He'll say it was over an hour again, and there was only 4 games to talk about. Oh yeah, so Simon said, yeah, Wigan's Leeds is on 7 Saturday morning on Sky Sports 4. The other match is 12 a.m. on Sunday. So oh yeah, I should be able to get both of those in. I'll find a way. But yeah, thank you all for joining us on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on Rugby League, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Tune in 9 p.m. tomorrow if you want to watch us with Rue and Hammer talking about the Warriors season. I'm sure that's going to be great to relive. But yeah, until then, thank you all. Cheers for joining me again, Richie, and cheers everyone for listening. And
pleasure,
good night.
Cheers.
See you all next week.